This project is one that I recommend every Airstream owner take a look at as soon as possible. And it's about the back cubby here in the Rangline. I actually ran into this while I was on a trip, and unfortunately I didn't get a video of it. But basically I was rudely surprised to go take a look in the back and find that the entire cabinet had collapsed down into the electronics bay, and all of my stuff that I was stowing back here was a mess and down in the tangled wires. Well, it looks like I have an unexpected repair on my hands during this latest trip. This was not expected at all, but I highly recommend everybody take a look and check this out, because the design Airstream had for the rear cubby is not great. We stopped at our last stop and I went back to take a look at it, and lo and behold, the floor of the rear cubby had completely ripped out and everything had fallen down into the tangle of cables next to the inverter. So what ended up happening is basically poor design on Airstream's part. If you look at this, this is the bottom shelf, and the way they supported it is they used these really cheap looking plastic inserts that really have no strength to them. On the rear end of it, there's actually a board that this sits on, and that takes the weight. In the middle, you can see this part that sticks out right here. This is supposed to insert into a groove into the wall. Unfortunately, in my case, and you should check yours, it didn't. The wall was built much farther out, and it just sat there. So the only thing that was actually supporting this entire cubby floor was the board that it was resting on here, and all of these screws around here. Needless to say, any sort of weight at all, and I didn't put a lot of weight in it, it just rips these guys right out. And then on top of that, the screws they used weren't quite long enough to actually go into the wall. So, how to repair this? Okay, after a quick trip to Home Depot, I think I have a repair plan. What I'm going to do is I bought a series of angle brackets, and I'm going to screw those into the interior wall and support along this front edge. So that should provide the support that this groove was meant to provide and isn't. I'm also going to try and screw some of these angle brackets in on this side, because even if I get angle brackets supporting here and here, and there's a board supporting here, that's still just a three-way support. This back corner has no support underneath it, and I would worry about the strength of that. So I need to get something over here, an angle bracket or something screwed into the side wall that this can actually support. And then I got a whole bunch of replacement screws too that are slightly longer than these, because these screws did not quite reach into the wood far enough, and that's why they ripped out. Here we are looking at the cubby, and you can see what I was talking about. Over here at the back side of the cubby, there's a board that floor rests on, but you can see the board doesn't stick out very far. So there's nothing right here that floor is actually resting on. And then looking over at the front of the cubby here, you can see the board just ends here. There is nothing that this is resting on at all. And that's why those screws just ripped it right out, and it fell down into the massive cables. And you can see here, this is the interior wall of the cubby. That's the notch that thing is supposed to fit into. Unfortunately, the notch is too thin for the actual board, and in my case, the interior wall is pushed out too far. Well, here is my attempted solution. We'll see how well this works. It turns out the board ends right about where the support needs to be. So I took some of the angle brackets, just bent them flat, and then screwed them into the bottom here so the board can rest right on top like that. Over here you can see I mounted angle brackets here and here, so that should support it from that side. Well, there's the repairs mostly complete. Does leave a little bit of a gap, which I don't like, but I will probably fix that later when I'm off the road. Put an extra screw in there just to try and hold it in place as well. It's time to take a look at this cupboard system. My temporary repairs that I had put in place to kind of hold it just are not holding it. They're just ripping out again. And I think the reason is fundamentally there's just no support for this shelf. And I put, maybe 10 pounds of gear in here, and basically every time I go over a bump, It's like hitting this thing with a 10-pound sledgehammer. And so this plywood is just never going to hold up to that. So I'm going to have to completely redesign how this works. So let's go ahead and take the thing apart, and we'll see if we can design something that's a little more robust than what Airstream put together here. Here is my plan for a much more permanent shelf mount. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue this board all the way around the inside. I'm going to mount this piece right here. I'm going to mount another piece all the way around. And I'm going to mount a piece on this side. Now this is the corner that is the real problem, because there is nothing supporting it. And as you can see, even with this, there's almost nothing to screw into on this board because they ended it so early. So what I'm going to do is take a vertical post and run a vertical post all the way down to the floor of the van right here, mounting to the back of this so that it will have vertical support. And being supported on 3 sides, that should keep the shelf from breaking out. This is going to be my vertical support post here. I'm just going to run it between the floor and the bottom here, maybe put a little bit of glue, try and hold it there. And then my cross piece here is just going to screw into this, and that should give it nice vertical support. Here is the final support bracket. Now that I've got it all screwed in, you can see the vertical post here goes all the way down to the metal van floor, connects to this panel. I attached another block on the side here to give it vertical support. I screwed it into the side support, so there should be lots of vertical support over here where previously there was nothing. And then around the front, we have one all the way along and all the way along the back. So that should support it on 3 sides. Now for the shelf floor. I have an idea to make this a little easier to take on and off. We'll see how well it works. This is my idea to make it easy to take on and off. What I'm going to do is mount a piano hinge along the bottom of the backboard, and then take the shelf itself, mount it to that piano hinge. So we'll be able to fold the shelf up and then take the entire unit out as one piece. I'm also going to use thumb screws to hold it in instead of these actual screws. And I'm probably going to create a brand new shelf. This shelf is just too chewed up from the way they put these plastic connectors in on the wrong side. Here is the new shelf I cut. Just some standard 1/2-inch veneer plywood. Doesn't have to take as much strength because it's supported on all sides, so it should be pretty solid. I do have to notch these corners so that they will clear these little hooks for the cargo net. As this thing swings up, it needs to have a hole there. And I want to make sure that this thing doesn't rattle around as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put some felt, sticky felt, all the way around the wood edge, so it's got something nice and soft to land on. Okay, it took a bit of tweaking, but here it is. Basically, this thing is now on a hinge. So what I can do is when I want to move the shelf, I fold this up, pull the shelf forward, and then I can take the whole unit out. Reverse it to put it back in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these little thumb screws. I'm going to put thumb screws with fixed bolt attachments in here. So to take this thing out, you just release 4 thumb screws, fold it up, pull it out. Much easier to open and close this than the original design Airstream had, and much more solid and secure in terms of supporting weight in this cabinet. Here is a final shot of the interior. I've got some felt stripping down here, minimize any noise and vibration. Got this rear beam pretty securely attached. Even though it's not load bearing, it'll just kind of fill in the gaps. And everything is ready to go. Put it all back together. A much better solution. So Airstream, if you're listening, the rear cabinet that you designed needs some work. Here we have the final layout of what the cabinet's going to look like. I've replaced the screws with these little thumb knobs. So now tool-free entry. you can just undo all of these to gain access to the panel. And also knobs down here on the floor. I just used a light colored polyurethane, which seems to match the tone of the wood very well. There are a few small gaps at the edge, which I had to have in order to fit the thing in. I might try and fill those in with felt, just so stuff doesn't fall down the cracks and get lost. But basically, with just a few quick turns, you take all the thumb screws out, and everything comes free. And then, to take it out, you just pop this up. This comes forward. You rotate, and the whole assembly comes free.